calling to order the May 13th, 2024 meeting of the Auburn Board of Selectmen. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Auburn Select Board is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022,
This conference
which
will now
suspends
be
the
recorded.
requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, dial 408-650-3123 with access code 235-235-861. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/235-235-861. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Is there anybody else recording? Seeing none, we will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we have two people signed up for public comment. We'll start with Pamela Fleming.
Good evening.
Could you
I'm
just
back.
give your name and your address?
I'm Pamela Fleming. I live in Auburn. I live on Ward Street now.
Okay.
I have moved. As a resident here in Auburn, I was taking care of my mother before she passed. In the recent months, in the past few years, I had an issue with the neighbor who's operating an illegal engine repair business directly across the street to me outside in his driveway. I contacted the town manager by certified letter in April of '23 and met with Chairman Sarah Ruffey in August. For assistance in this matter, I obtained documents from the town's water department that proved that he was conducting an illegal business and presented it to the select board in January of '24. Code enforcement department stated that they saw no evidence of this illegal activity, never stopping their vehicle or driving onto the property. Of course, nothing would be seen. The town manager, who was provided with business receipts and invoices, and including photo evidence that I obtained in my investigation, finally issued a cease and desist order in December of '23. The neighbor did not stop repairing engines, though I sent multiple Ring camera evidence, date and time stamps as you requested. Once again, code enforcement saw no evidence that he did continue. They then advised him to apply for a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals to no longer be illegal and become a documented and legal business. I was not able to attend the ZBA meeting, but found someone who represented me that night. That neighbor admitted on record on the February 15th meeting that he has over the years has 8,000 customers. Say they have a snowblower and a lawn machine. That's 16,000 pieces of equipment that are being repaired in his driveway. Nobody saw this. I find it really hard. Our sound legal argument was that the motor repair in the RA residential district was not permitted under our bylaws and could not receive a special permit. In addition, any such repair business would require a hazardous material license from the state and would require a log to be kept. My neighbor had neither. Despite this argument and my complaints about noise, lights, late hours of operation, including weekends and holidays, and video and phone harassment, the ZBA granted him this permit. The ZBA did this in violation of Auburn bylaws and state environmental laws. In addition, violated the state open meeting laws when they held the meeting, which they have admitted. With the abject failure of the town government and Chair Sarah Ruffey to render me satisfaction, I was forced to solve the problem myself. I moved away. At great personal sacrifice and cost, I hope none of you ever have to go through this, especially at my age with declining health. In conclusion, you ignored my pleas for help and have shattered my belief in any positive role the Auburn government plays in helping the lives of the average citizen. It was a really difficult time for me.
I am sorry to hear that. However, the ZBA has rectified their
I
public
understand.
meeting law.
And I have moved at considerable cost.
I am sorry that you are dissatisfied.
Moving, I had 2 weeks to move. It was really difficult. I'm just starting to get over it now. But I had no choice. I saw the writing on the wall, and I knew that nobody was ever going to be on my side. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our second public comment is from John Lawson? Lozon, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Lozon. I'm a resident of Main Street, Auburn. I've been a resident of Auburn for 58 years now. I was here a few weeks ago with a few issues that I thought were very, very important. So a guy from not the water department, water district, wherever he was from, came down to my neighborhood, and I took him for a walk down there in the woods, and we went through, and I showed him some spots where the water was going into Dark Brook Reservoir, and Kettlebrook rather, from the polluted areas of the mill. And he said, everything looks fine, and this stuff over here, maybe that's what you think is polluted and this and that. So, I said, do you want to test it with a test kit? He said, no big deal, and this and that. So, I took it for what it was worth. But the thing is, down in my backyard, there's fresh water. I got fresh spring water that comes out of my backyard. All the neighbors' animals go there. There's been deer there. There's a bear there. Anyhow, that goes down into the right. Now, to the left, in comes the crappy water, in with the good water. It's going somewhere because it used to go into the mill building. The building was built in the late 1700s before there was any sort of EPA stuff going on. And, before electricity was built, all the machinery was run, and it was just all dye. It's dye and wool, and it was sent all over the United States. They dyed the wool and they sent it out. So there's dye in that ground down there. I know there is. And I'll tell you another thing. I didn't say this last time, but there was a girl named Sandy Liberty, 49 years old, died of lung cancer. There was a boy named Mike Frutenthal, died of lung cancer, 50 years old. Scott David died of lung cancer, 50 years old. Bruce Booley died of lung cancer, 60 years old. Robert Lozon died of fibrosis of the lungs, 76 years old. Gary Goodnow was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer 11 and a half years ago, given 6 months to live, yet he still lives. These are all people that have grown up right around that area. So that's my first order of business. I find that a little alarming. I don't know if anyone else does. Now, while we're talking about Main Street, Auburn, I've lived there for a long time. The last time I recall it being paved is between 45 and 50 years ago. It's just full of potholes. It's ridiculous. I realize Witter Street and Francis Street that comes off the sides of Main Street are private roads, and they're not your responsibility. But however, Main Street's a public road, and it's a responsibility of the town. It looks like crap. I should have brought pictures of it. Potholes. Go take a ride down there. It's a mile away. Also, I'm curious why this town seems to have enough money. Why aren't our police wearing body cams? Anyone have an answer?
Our police department is going to be wearing body cams shortly. It was a grant that we received for them, so I believe that is in the works.
What's holding it up? I mean, did they have body cams? Do they have all the apparatus? What are we waiting on?
Sir, we have the equipment. We just have to bargain that with two groups of unions that are required to wear the body cams. So those agree.
Wow.
Yeah. So that is a change of conditions. It has to be bargained. We have bargained that. The agreements are about
So
to.
is any of the equipment in the station now?
Yes.
Oh, so they have stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
So it should be implemented in the coming weeks.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. And one last question I have. I was here a few weeks ago discussing the illegal alien situation that we have in our hotels, in the hotels down the road. I have specific questions like, are they vetted? That's one question. Anyone have an answer? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. Are they vetted? And if so, how many? I mean, this is Auburn, they're right down the hotels. They've been here for what, over a year now?
So, Mr. Lazon, I can tell you that they are vetted by the state. They are placed by the state, not by the town of Auburn. So all of those screenings are made by the state.
Okay, so we don't have any people that are murderers, rapists, gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, stuff like that?
I believe that to be so, but the state does the screening and they don't share that information with us.
So it could be true, we just don't have that information. And by the way things happened, by the way things happened in the Auburn Mall yesterday, is anyone here not familiar with what happened in the Auburn Mall yesterday? Everybody knows? I didn't hear. Oh, okay. There was a smash, what would you call it, a smash and grab where the illegals went in and busted the place up, or was it not that bad? Can you describe to me what happened?
I'm not
yesterday?
going to get into specifics of the activity at the
Why
moment.
not? No, seriously, no. This is a town meeting, this is a public meeting. I've been paying taxes for 40 years now. I pay taxes federal level, I pay it on the state, I pay it on the county, and right here at the town.
So as I understand it, there was gang-related activity that came from surrounding towns.
Oh, it wasn't illegals.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Oh, okay, I apologize for that. I heard they were illegals. Okay, so they weren't involved in anything.
I'm not prepared to answer these questions. I'm just was given the information this morning. I don't have the level of detail that you are seeking.
Yeah,
All I know is it was gang-related activity at the Auburn Mall.
I don't know of any gangs around here, but Worcester, there's gangs down there. Yeah, absolutely there are, yeah. There's gangs in them hotels too, I bet. Yeah, the problem is we don't know about them,
I'm sorry.
That's my problem, we don't know about them. So, again, change starts in small government. This is small government right here. What are you gonna do, anything, or, I mean, there's a big, I could get on the $66 billion versus the $3 billion versus illegal aliens against the homeless veterans. But, I realize the town does have ways to take care of homeless veterans. That's more of a Worcester thing. But, what's going on? Let's have some information. And that's all I have to say. Just more information about that stuff. I got a right to know. I'm paying for them. I'm paying for to go to school. No one paid for me to go to school. I didn't go to school. I went in the military. Thank you. I'm sorry for getting a little bit heated. I apologize. My name is John Lozon.
Thank you for your comments. So we will have, moving along, we have a public hearing.
Madam Chair, can I make a motion that we move up Select Board General Item 7A, seasonal open air license on town property, Auburn Junior Women's Club?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. So enclosed is the application. Are there any questions? Would you ladies like to come up and tell us a little bit about? Thank you.
I'm T.G. Blansky, the current past president of the General Federation of Women's Clubs here in Massachusetts, past president of the Auburn Junior Women's Club, and the foundress, along with the now deceased Barry Coleman, of the Auburn Duck Race. We founded it 21 years ago. It started out as an event to provide something for families and children, something for them to do. All of our kids' events are free. It's free to come. The race is usually run in a waterway. Over the years, we've navigated the different construction that goes on around the Auburn Mall and around the high school. But basically it stays in the waterway under Route 12 over by the fire station. We contact the fire department, get them involved. We usually had the town clerk in years past be our official duck plucker.
She will be.
Our official duck plucker. The monies raised are all go back into scholarships that we give back to the town and or other charitable programs, i.e. veterans or schools. We do a whole program for advocates for children with the money. What else? Am I missing something else?
We do backpacks
Oh,
for the
Backpacks.
foster children.
Foster children. So the money's raised go basically all back into good programs. Like I said, 21 years. We get the fire department comes with the bucket truck. We put our duckies in there, and you adopt a duck for $5, or you can get a 6-quack or a flock. And yeah, we wait till one of the things, the concerns that was raised that I'll discuss is the fact that it's Memorial Day. And one of the things that we're very sensitive to is waiting for the race to go off until after the ceremonies at the cemetery are over. And our event can't start until the fire department has left the cemetery when they come back down. So I know in the past we've had a resident or two that have approached us about having a family fun event during Memorial Day, but we are sensitive to it. And again, it does not, the race does not go off until after the festivities or the ceremonies at the cemetery.
Great. Board members have any questions?
Make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, with the conditions recommended by the DCG to be placed upon the license.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well.
I'd like to make a motion that we waive the fee for the open air license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving back up to number 4, public hearings. There's a change of officer, change of manager, and transfer of stock for the Auburn Package Store. Is there a motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. I do believe we have someone in the Zoom for this.
Yeah, Attorney John Moretti, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. My name's John Moretti of Democus Law Offices. I'm here on behalf of Shiv Pancham Inc., which does business as Auburn Package Store at 196 Auburn Street. And with me is Goveen Patel. We're seeking an amendment of the license, and Goveen is going to buy the shares of stock owned by his brother Krishna. So Goveen will be the sole shareholder, the sole officer, and the manager of record of the license. There are no other changes to anything like that. It's still the same operation, same footprint, just this stock transfer between brothers to buy one out. So that's what we're seeking today. Goveen's owned the store with his brother for past 10, 12 years. He's tip certified, and nothing else will change. So with that, any questions you may have, I'll take those.
Thanks. Is there any audience members that have questions? Any board members that have questions?
Madam Chair, through you to Town Administration, can I just confirm there's no issues with this business reported by any town office?
Not that we have been made aware of.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to close the hearing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Is there another motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the change of officers.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 The chair is a yes as well.
Motion that we approve the change of manager and stock transfer as requested.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too,
Thank you.
thanks. Moving along, we have a housing production plan presentation.
Good evening. My name is Emily Globitz. I work for the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. Tonight I have I'll try to keep it very brief presentation and summary of the draft housing production plan. The goal is to seek a vote of the board to adopt the housing production plan so that I may now submit it to the state for approval. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background on this plan. I hope you've all had a chance to look over it. And then I'm also happy to take any feedback or questions as well. Oh, and one more thing, I also presented this a few weeks ago, I believe on April 23rd to the planning board, and they did vote to approve it as well. So I do need a vote of approval from both boards in order to submit it to the state. So just a quick background, this process of updating this plan kicked off in March of last year. It's an update to the 2017 plan, which is now expired. These are 5-year plans that are approved by the state, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly DHCD. I've been working closely with the Housing Production Plan Committee, consisting of staff from the Development and Inspectional Services Department and the town manager. We've been meeting regularly on approximately a monthly basis. They've been so supportive and helpful in guiding this process, providing really insightful information and good feedback every step of the way. So I really feel like it's a strong plan for the town for the next 5 years. We did a good amount of community outreach, trying to get feedback from the community on what the issues are around housing, any concerns around affordability. We had a survey out. We got about 260 responses. That was out from April 2023 to August 2023. We held a community forum in September of last year as well, which featured a presentation, Q&A, and a small group breakout activity. I believe materials from both of these should be available on the town's website as well. So just in a quick summary, these public outreach methods showed us that there are, in fact, people who are struggling to afford to live here that don't have their housing needs met. We asked the public about preferences in relation to future housing types and preferred locations, finding that there's a lot of demand for housing for seniors as well as first-time homebuyers, as well as housing that is affordable. I guess I'm sure you all are familiar with 40B, but just to provide a little background on the importance of planning for housing. So under Chapter 40B, cities and towns have to reserve 10% of their housing stock as deed-restricted affordable units for households earning 80% or less of the area median income. So currently, the town of Auburn is only at 5.24%. So the town has not met this mandate, this state mandate of 10% affordable housing. So 5.2% that equals 366 units, when in fact the town needs 698 units in order to comply. So it's about 332 units short of meeting this requirement. So by not meeting the 10% affordable housing threshold, this leaves the town vulnerable to developers seeking comprehensive permits, which allows them to override zoning requirements and build more densely in areas of town that may be zoned for only single-family housing, if they include a percentage of affordable units in their developments. This plan will act as a great tool for the town. For the next 5 years, it can be used to kind of manage these 40B developments. As long as the town can demonstrate that is actively, gradually adding affordable units to its housing stock. This is described in more detail in the housing production goals section. I think it's on page 58. But if the town produces a 0.5% of its housing stock, as affordable units, so this would equal 35 units, it can claim safe harbor from 40B developments, 40B developers seeking comprehensive permits for a year, or if it produces 70 units, it can claim safe harbor for 2 years. So once this housing production plan is in place, and if there's any developments down the line that are going to produce 35 or 70, units, you will be able to enter into that safe harbor period. Yeah, so that's just quick overview. The plan also updates or provides updated population and housing data, the constraints and challenges to housing, and we went through and created an action plan of recommended goals and strategies. This, I believe, is at the very end of the plan. It's kind of hopefully helpful to boards, committees, town staff, anyone interested in housing initiatives in the town to just kind of refer to. And it provides kind of recommended responsible parties and a timeline. So that'll be, we hope, a very useful tool for the town. In summary, the strategies are recommending ways to build local capacity, so leveraging financial resources as well as professional and community support to kind of continue this work, continue community outreach and implementing the needed housing initiatives. It has a series of recommended zoning changes since regulatory barriers and end up being really preventing much needed types of housing from being built. Let's see, there's a set of housing development, like production strategies, so ways the town can provide support for projects and remove certain challenges and barriers to creating housing through partnerships and advocacy, and taking the necessary steps to prepare for new development. And then the final kind of group of strategies is housing preservation strategies, so just making sure that the existing affordable housing stock is preserved so the towns don't lose the units. And ways that the town can kind of collaborate and support residents, collaborate with local housing organizations to support residents, as well as restoring vacant and abandoned properties. I think that's pretty much it for my quick summary there. Any like questions or feedback on it?
Thank you. Do board members have any questions?
Question. What's the process to get it approved by the state?
So if there is a vote of approval for tonight from this board, I just need to get a signature from the town's leading officer, which I believe is Ed. It's usually either like the town manager or the chair of the select board, so I'm not quite sure. And then I will basically send an email to I think it's Phil DiMartino from EOHLC. Who goes through the plans. The state has, I think, 30 days to review. They'll get back to me with any feedback. This is probably my 7th or 8th plan that I've worked on with towns. I work all over southern Worcester County. So I have a very good sense of what the state is looking for, but occasionally they might want a little clarification or minor change. If there's anything major that they end up flagging, I will come back to both the boards just for a vote of approval. But I don't anticipate that. So I've been working with Adam and Ed. So they will probably update the board once the plan is approved. I'll get hard copies for you. And then we'll have a plan ready to go. It should be posted online in any appropriate places. Hopefully that's clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the housing production plan, you mentioned going to the planning board. Was that a public hearing or was that just a presentation?
It was just a presentation.
Were there any residents present at the?
There were, I don't think there were any questions asked, but there were residents present. Yeah, it was here and I was here.
Is there any grant money associated with having a housing plan? I know we've gotten grants to do a housing plan, but is there any on the back end to pay for expenses and other things that might come our way with 40B?
Yeah, so it definitely boosts the town's chances of getting grant funding from state programs. So there's the Housing Choice Designation and Funding Program. That's a state program. I can't remember, is Auburn a Housing Choice community? No, it's not. So there's different criteria that kind of the state would like to see, one of which is if the town has an active housing production plan. So if they can see that, that's kind of another box you can check that kind of boost your chances of applying for housing related projects. So sometimes if in this program, I'm trying to think of like examples of other towns that have gotten funding, maybe for like supportive like infrastructure or like pre-development work, things like that. So it definitely will enhance the town's chances of getting any kind of future funding. There isn't any kind of direct, I would say, like avenues towards leading from a housing production plan to getting funding, but it certainly helps. The state loves to see communities that have these in place, showing that like people are actively working towards improving their housing stock, more diverse housing options, more affordable housing options. So yeah, this will be really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Do accessory dwelling units count for affordable in this plan, or how's that work?
They not directly. So the kind of affordable housing that we're talking about is like deed restricted as affordable to those earning 80% or less of the AMI. So an owner of an ADU would have to kind of set up like a deed restriction. I'm not super familiar with if towns have done that in the past. I think it is an opportunity. I mean, it would be up to the homeowner to do that. But in a way, it does add to kind of like, we call it like the lowercase a affordable housing. So it's not necessarily like under these state restrictions, but it's just greater affordability and like greater opportunity to live in the town, continue living in the town. You know, if maybe a young family wants to move in and their elderly parents could kind of live in the ADU, just making it more of a community for all to continue living here. So,
Under other housing developments, the deed restriction has a timeline. Once those expire, do they come off the roll? And we would be required to add another 150, 300, or 700.
Yeah, right. I can't recall if there's any in Auburn right now that are kind of in danger of expiring. Those deed restrictions can always be extended as well. I think it's just a process between the state and the kind of owner. Can't remember. Do you remember if there's any that are expire? I can't remember. A lot these days that are being built are affordable in perpetuity. I think that's kind of the way things are going now.
I'd like that to happen. I don't know if that's always the case. And then,
Yeah.
So for Auburn to commit to 35 units, we don't own land, we don't own housing. How do we commit to 35 units per year?
That's a good question. It could come in the form of like a friendly 40B development. So working, with a developer who's under the 40B program, who's willing to include, I think it's 20 or 25% of their units as affordable. That is always the process I would recommend towns lean towards than kind of the more like hostile developments. Yeah. That's probably the easiest way to get kind of that number.
So this maybe you can answer it, maybe Dr. Menard. The 300 plus units that we currently have in town, does that include the new developments that are underway?
No, is that the like Eastland Partners one? Yeah, no, that's not included. So that will actually be a great addition to your, if that all kind of goes well and everything's permitted correctly and it's all built. Yeah, that will be a great addition to the SHI. I think I had it down. The SHI will actually go up to 6.4%. It looks like right now there should be 324 units going in. That's what I was told. So that'll be a boost, and the town would be able to claim safe harbor for 2 years.
So we can already claim the safe harbor with that.
I don't think until it's
But,
permitted.
well, don't we have 35 units coming online in June? Right? It's all going through. Eastland Partners is permitting and coming online.
I think they have to have occupancy permits.
Yeah.
my understanding is they'd be looking for that relatively soon.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question was, and I don't know if you'd have this, but to the town administration, do we know when Eastland Partners will be coming online and permitted? Because that did catch my eye that we would then qualify for the 2-year safe harbor once they do.
So I'll let Adam comment on that. I know the first phase of occupancy is going to occur roughly in June. I don't know how many units those are, but once the project started, I believe it was a 2.5-year build-out to recognize all of those 325 units.
From what I understand, it will all depend on the certificate of occupancy of the project, whether they look for that for each building as it goes along or the entire project. I'm not sure what they're looking to do, but it's only after the certificate of occupancy will the state consider it, certifying them as the SHI. So it could be this year, could be next year. It's tough to say. It's up to the state to ultimately certify it also.
Certainly.
So we have a couple of 40Bs in process. So if they're in process, we can't claim safe harbor. If the occupancy permits and everything else are given after they, because at least one of them has not applied to the state. So I know the other one has. So that's a question. And if neither of you can answer it, perhaps town administration can seek through staff an answer to that question, because I think that's an answer that a lot of people would like to know.
Ed and I can talk to Phil DiMartino about that, about the specifics of the scenario. My suspicion is if they apply for the comprehensive permit before it's certified, we'll have to go through the comprehensive permit, but we could talk to the state for specifics on that.
I would appreciate it. Thank you.
So I just want to understand occupancy of each building, right? It's not completion of the 300 units. Okay, so I'll ask through the chair if the town can get that answer for our next meeting, find out when they qualify, if it's each building or if it's the entire project.
We will get that information for you for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yes. What does safe harbor status allow the town to do when it comes to 40B housing?
Yeah, so it allows the town to deny developers seeking comprehensive permits. Otherwise, if you're not at the 10%, you haven't demonstrated that you've added the 0.5% of total units as affordable units, developers under Chapter 40B have the right to seek a comprehensive permit and build more densely in, for example, an area zoned only for single-family housing. They could build a multifamily apartment, for example.
So I guess it lets the town have a little more say over
Yes.
these projects, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
I actually have a request.
Sure.
I have not had an opportunity to go through this as thoroughly as I would like. Certainly, I'm not expecting the representative to come back. I can certainly forward all my comments or any questions I have to Mr. Kazanovich, but I would just ask that we carry over any potential vote to the next regularly scheduled meeting, which would not be the reorganization meeting. It would be the next regular meeting in May or June, I think.
June, yeah, it's, I think June. Is there a timeline that you need to have this submitted?
No, that would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want, there's no implications, negative implications if we delay it.
No. Whenever you're comfortable and confident voting to approve it, it's fine with me.
So, Madam Chair, I would make a motion to hold this over to the first regular meeting in June, whatever that date may be.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. So we will get back to you with any
course.
questions.
Of course.
Thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving along, we have no department items, we have no communications. We have completed number 7. We have no proclamations or recognitions. We do have a gift acceptance for DPW for a bench at Pappas. Do board members have any questions?
Can I just ask one question, just in terms of process? For these park benches, is there any plaque placed on the bench in memoriam to let the public know who donated it, who was donated for, in honor of, et cetera?
So I did get a call from Mrs. Maher making this request. I was sought out through DPW whether there was a policy that either prohibits, allows requests such as this. There is no policy in place, but they were concerned about the type of bench and the long-term care. I had Kenny Fairbanks work with Mrs. Maha to coordinate the location, the cost, and the type of bench to be installed. I will say, going forward, I would suggest through the Parks, Rec, and Cemetery Department that they create a policy relative to these requests, so there'd be some guidance in the future moving forward.
Was there a request for a placard from Mrs. Maher?
To my knowledge, no, but I'm guessing that as a result of the in memory of her husband, there would be some type of recognition on the bench or associated with the bench.
I will make a motion to accept the gift with gratitude, provided that no marker be placed on it until a policy is in place from the town, and that a letter be prepared for the chair to sign.
Is there a second, or does anybody have questions?
Is your motion conditional on, once a policy is in place and the opportunity to place a marker is there, should a policy be in place, or would your motion prohibit that action from taking place?
You know, there is no request before us from the applicant. I don't think that we should presume that there is a request, and we do not have a policy, so we should have a policy to govern this as we do of any structure, because as the manager has said, when this building or this bench decays, is the expectation that this is an in perpetuity thing, we're now going to have to do that. So I think there are some issues that we should flesh out before we do it.
If I may, I could say I was concerned about the long-term maintenance of this bench as well. I think the recommendation by the DPW superintendent was such that it's a durable bench made out of a composite that won't require maintenance like a wood bench would. So I can check with him if it's best to hold this item till the next meeting, so I can get that additional information for you. So it may make your decision that much more easier.
Can you also, as part of that, get a definitive answer on whether there's a desire to have a plaque put in honor? Yes. So we know? Yes. Thank you.
I would make that motion that we carry this over to our next regular meeting. With those questions that have been raised by board members.
If there's a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. So we have some town manager items, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
So item 8A, this item was carried over from the last meeting. I was hoping to have some information that I could share with you this evening. I did hear from a representative through DDIS that they're going to do a site visit this week that is going to put a cost estimate on the repairs to bring this up to code. So I'm asking that we hold this till the next meeting as well.
Okay.
On item 8B, we have provided to the board, we assembled all the concerns and issues that we are aware of through the process of negotiating a friendly 40B, as well as some of the issues that were raised through the DCG and some regular departmental review. I can tell you in terms of public safety, as it applies to fire, there was some agreements on some modifications that were made under the friendly lip that were not code-related, that were raised in a letter by the chief. I asked him to include that because the friendly 40B criteria is not going to be used in this review going under mass housing right now. So we collected all of the issues and presented it in memo form with supporting letters stating the origin of those concerns. I'm not looking for any action. I just want to let you know, as it relates to the other item, the next item, that we asked for and were granted a 30-day extension on the submittal of these issues. So we have till the end of June to submit. So if the board would like to take some time and review what we have presented and maybe add anything to it that you feel as though has not been incorporated in here, we'll still have a meeting or two to address those items.
So one question I have is, along with Mr. Carpenter, I attended the walkthrough at Perry Place, and the representative from Mass Housing made it very clear that they do not necessarily look at all of the details that the ZBA would look at. They look at financing, they look at ability to build, they look at the details of the specific site, and they also look at and give weight to the credibility and the suitability of the developer to construct and follow through on the project, and whether they'd be a good neighbor, et cetera, for the town. And one of the things that I thought was missing in what the staff put together, and that I'd like to know if you were able to put together, is the fact that the town negotiated in good faith efforts with the developer. We had several meetings. There was a back and forth. There was a request by that developer to vote on that agreement by a certain date. The board met it, and then the developer took their time, was non-responsive, and then at the last minute opted to file directly with the state for the quote-unquote reason that it's easier, which to me goes to the credibility and the suitability of that developer. That the town was negotiating in good faith, and they were not necessarily negotiating in good faith. So I'd like to see some summary of that in whatever is sent to Mass Housing.
Through the chair to Mr. Crane, I can tell you I did have a discussion with Michael Busby regarding the process and our efforts to try to negotiate a friendly LIP. I fully intended on submitting that developer's agreement, although it's not executed. It will demonstrate the amount of resources that we poured into that in an attempt to get a friendly 40B. But certainly we can work in some language in the overall letter that goes to them indicating that.
Thank you.
Also, is there a way in his application to the state, he put things that we had not negotiated in our final request, that as he had put that there was the money for the water district, which was not in our final request, as a part of the reason he decided to go to the state instead of working with us. So it was a little misleading in his application on why he turned around and went to the state. So I don't know if you guys noticed that, but he had put both the
Yes.
water and the additional funds, which is not exactly accurate, or not was what we were requesting in that final.
No, and he came in with that as his opening gambit. The board, at no time did we say that that was a preferred
Right.
option. So to the chair's point, it should be made perfectly clear that again, we, as Mr. Crane and the chair has mentioned, let's be accurate. I don't expect more or less, and we need to do the same. But, it's very disappointing with the amount of time that the prior chair spent, and obviously Mr. Crane, as a new member, jumped right in after his election and did a phenomenal job with negotiating. And then to see something that really responded to the neighbors and the neighborhood needs is kind of, well, we're going to get a water connection, which I don't think is a bad thing in a macro sense, but it doesn't speak to the needs and the needs of the community, that particular community, that neighborhood, which is really who we have to be very concerned about, especially with the amount of traffic they're going to be dealing with. They're talking and they're still sticking with raising the road. I'm certainly not in favor of that. It just seems like they came in with a set of what they wanted to do, and now we're here 2 years later, seemingly, and it's, why did you come in for a friendly when you clearly, this is what you came in on day one? So were you really being forthcoming?
If I may, I made that same observation. It seems as though they went the unfriendly route because the cost of providing the impacts that the town identified, in addition to the water district, would lead someone to believe that they went that route because they didn't want to put up 1.2 million. Clearly, they committed to funding our needs of 600 some odd thousand and not the water district. So it is somewhat mind-boggling that, that was the reason that they put on the application. But certainly, we can incorporate that. I will have a conversation with Mr. Busby again to seek some guidance on how we can best represent that in our filing.
So I didn't see anyone anywhere in here, and I don't know how relevant it is, but in fitting with the neighborhood, this monstrosity of a building, I don't know if it has any play or leeway in it, but if they're not going to consider the zoning board's typical purview, is there a way that we can write that it is not to be constructed in the same manner the other multi-housing units in that area are?
I think Mr. Busby did talk in general terms, so I certainly don't want to suggest that this was, a long conversation, but he did suggest that they did look at the character of the neighborhood and, if you're going to put a building of this height, and I know he did have some sidebars with the developer's engineer saying, you need to, these things will help you if you make some changes. But I did not hear, nor did I attempt to overhear him making any comments about the height, but he did in general make a comment that they look at that. So it's certainly something that we could put in there.
Yeah, if I remember right, he specifically said if it's a 8 to 10 story building, clearly that would be extremely out of place with the neighborhood. But he did not weigh in saying whether a 3 to 4 is appropriate. He just said, obviously, we look at it, and if it was 8 to 10, we'd automatically throw it out. But that's, I think, where he left it.
And this is our response, so we should put in what our concerns as a committee.
And that's exactly what I'm asking, if the rest of the board would to add. And again, most of those houses are 2-story. It's going to double the size. The length of those buildings are a lot bigger than even the condo association just a little further away. And those are side-by-side condos, not apartment-type complex. I don't want to get into the specifics of it, but just to mention it's not conforming with what is existing in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I did take from him as well, he said that although it might not be under Mass Housing's purview when they review everything that's in here, they make sure to point to the developer and to the ZBA that there are legitimate issues raised by the town, whether they were under mass housing or not, and that the developer should be working with the town and the ZBA to mitigate and offset those issues and to work through those issues. So, I mean, my approach and what I'd like to see, if the other board members agree with me, is I'd like to see this be a very comprehensive letter that throws everything in the kitchen sink in it, with the hopes that mass housing does identify those issues and concerns, whether we think they're, 100% or 80% or 50% valid. That way, when it comes back to the ZBA, we give our zoning board of appeals enough support that we possibly can, to ensure that if the project goes forward, it goes forward as the best project possible.
And we should make reference to what we asked for was within the budget that the developer mentioned. That was his budget, that was his figure. So our ask, if he were to try and make an uneconomic argument, he gave us the budget, we negotiated within the budget. So I think that should be also clearly spelled out in the document. Whatever he committed to the water district is separate and apart from what obligations he had to the town. And it's the town, not the water district, that's giving him the permit, not, so I think there's something to be said for that as well, so.
I think that's great. Those are great comments to include. Does anybody else have comments or questions?
What's the last meeting that we have to vote on this in order to meet the deadline, just so we know?
Second meeting in June.
That'd be the second meeting in June. I don't know how that lines up.
June 24th would be the second meeting.
And when's the 30-day extension valid through? I just want to make sure we don't.
I think it's the 28th.
Okay.
So we should probably shoot for a draft on the 13th and maybe a potential vote.
Yeah, that's, thank you.
Okay. So we do have a tabled item, the naming committee recommendations. As you were a member of that naming committee, Steve, would you like to walk us through?
Yep, so I know we carried this over because not every member was here, but we did have a naming subcommittee where we asked the residents to make some recommendations, and some recommendations were made and discussed at these meetings per the naming subcommittee item 9A. So we discussed potential names and ended up selecting, or we would like to recommend that we name the addition the trustees room. As one of the recommendations specifically was to name it the trustees room, but another community member suggested we name it more for ideas and things that are greater than one person. And we thought that the Board of Trustees is greater than any one person, and the board, over the history of its time, has certainly contributed to the good of the community. So that would be the naming subcommittee's recommendation, as well as previously discussed. We would recommend that some of the other names get forwarded on to the appropriate committees with, with Beth Johnson's name being recommended or submitted to the school committee to find a way to honor that individual, as well as Miss Goodrich. Her name was recommended as well, and we would forward that on to the town government and find a way to recognize her volunteerism as well. Sorry, don't have it all. Mr. Crane, did I miss anything?
There were two other recommendations coming out. The first is that In addition to the sunroom, we made a recommendation that the children's room, which is undergoing an expansion right now, that my understanding is about 50% completed, be named in honor of Dr. Martha Pappas, which was another name put forward to the committee to name the sunroom after. Dr. Pappas has made contributions personally as well as through the trust towards the children's room initially, as well as the children's room expansion. I know from attending a recent Board of Trustees meeting that there was recently a birthday held for Dr. Pappas and the birthday tea. And during that tea, she got an update from the library director on the status of the children's room, which she was very excited about and particularly focused on. So we recommended that. And the fourth and final recommendation was that rather than having a naming subcommittee to go through this every single time, somebody wants to name a building or something after a person, that the board develop a policy of recognition that refines and creates certain criteria, including or not including the 3 criteria that we had set up, and basically sets out a policy on how these names will be considered by the board in advance of people coming forward and saying, I want you to name this building after this person, which was the case here. There were 3 separate recommendations made unsolicited that was actually triggered by 1 and 2 followed. So we just think that it'd be in the best interest of the town to have a policy going forward on that.
I will just tell you that the naming subcommittee is not the norm. It's not been the norm since I've been on the committee. The reason that we did this was because it involved more than one area. So I'm just going to say to the committee that when we created it, the children's room was not part of the purview. So the bridge, the outdoor spaces in this addition were within the purview of the committee. So I don't feel like we can name the children's room at this time because when we created the committee, it was not in the purview of the committee because it had not happened. But I'm happy if people want to do that moving forward, to put in a request to name it after an individual. I would certainly accept that and thank the committee for all the work that you did. I know it was a long process. I certainly feel that Dr. Pappas deserves to be recognized. And as I was speaking to somebody else, the bridge between the fire department and obviously the library would, for me, be the ideal place because I feel that they have, through their generosity, built many bridges in town. So I thought that would be an appropriate way to recognize. I think we should clarify whether, Mrs. Pappas, Dr. Pappas, would like her husband's name on it. I don't know. I know the recommendation was to name it for her. So I would certainly support naming that bridge after Dr. Pappas because of all that they've done. And I would certainly support naming the sunroom after the trustees as well.
Do other board members have comments? So I have a few comments. While I don't disagree that the trustees have done incredible work for the town, this project, the sunroom itself and the expansion of the library and the sprinkler system that was a requirement of the expansion wouldn't actually be moving forward without funding from the Pappases. They funded almost $700,000 for this to happen. And while I don't think they expect anything to be named after it, I think when they provide funding, I think it's disingenuous to turn around and name it after somebody else or a group or an organization. And I wouldn't want that to be misconstrued by them as that we are not thankful for it. So I personally would rather see the sunroom not named at all than to name it after somebody who, a group of people, the trustees, that while they contribute substantially to the library, this project wouldn't have moved forward without the Pappas's funding. And that's my biggest concern. I know she, from her personal account, funded for the children's library, the new furniture, but I think this whole project in general would have not moved forward without their generous donation. And I agree that the Library Board of Trustees deserves recognition. I just wouldn't want this to affect possible other donations in the future. So did we want to move forward with this? Is there a motion?
So I'm going to make a motion to name the sunroom addition after the trustees.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I am also opposed.
I would make a motion that we name the bridge between the space between the library and the fire department headquarters after Dr. Martha Pappas.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The chair is yes as well. And I think that's all we were looking at for this, right? The library, or the children's library? Is the children's library part of this scope, or can it be
So,
set aside for further?
I think we should make a recommendation for the next meeting to potentially add naming that room.
So what I would recommend is we send a note to the Library Board of Trustees and ask them to what their opinion is as to the naming, because this building or this room is 50% complete. And I would actually like to see that body run this process, drive the process. It is a building that without their hard work would not be, as well as the staff. I certainly don't mean to exclude them. They do a phenomenal job. I would like to see the library trustees drive the process of the naming, in that it is a building that they have policy direction under. So I would make a motion that we send a letter to the Board of Library Trustees asking for their input on the naming of the children's, as yet uncompleted children's expansion, and ask them to pursue the naming process.
So I'm going to second that. I just want to note for the record, though, that the subcommittee included a representative chosen by the Library Board of Trustees. So it was not that they were not represented on the subcommittee.
Oh, no,
They were
wanted them on
represented
it.
in the subcommittee.
I wanted them on the library board.
I know, and I'm grateful for that, Mr. Carpenter. I was not when the original subcommittee was formed, part of this board. I'm full in favor and second what Mr. Carpenter just said, and I like the idea that the trustees will drive that process. The trustees will come back with a recommendation to this board to name it. It is, although they do not have jurisdictional control over that building, they certainly have policy control. They are probably the elected board that is most dedicated to that facility. So I'm in favor of that.
Is that, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Okay, so moving along, we have member items. Mr. Corrine.
So I just wanted to, I have two items. The first is that at the last meeting, we had two department updates, one from Finance and one from Public Works. That was very informative. I was very appreciative and got a good insight into how they're operating, different projects that are coming before them, what their priorities are. And I know that, that update was adopted by the board at two separate requests of myself and Mr. Chambers, where we thought that it was important that this board hears regularly from the departments what's going on, how operations are going, so we can learn how to support them and they understand and get feedback from the board on what our priorities are as the highest elected office in town. It was originally requested, I think, back in October or November, and the end of April, pretty much the beginning of May was the first time we had the update. At that rate, I will be on my third year of my first term, I think, before we'll actually hear from all departments. And I'm not sure, at least for me, my goal was to hear from them on sort of each department annually. So what I'd like the board to consider is to change the schedule instead of being only the fifth Monday when we have a fifth Monday. Instead, that beginning this month, we have a department update, and on the second meeting of each month, for those months that we do not have a third meeting, and then the third meeting when we do have a third meeting. And based on the amount of things on our agenda, it can be, instead of two departments, it can be a single department. I would leave that to the town administration. For scheduling purposes, I would just like to see us have a more regular update and interaction with the departments.
I think it's a great idea. I just want to point out, when we make requests, we have to ask the board to actually vote, because we can make all the requests we want, but it's up to the board to direct the manager. So I think it's a great idea. I just want to remind everybody, we act as a board, we do not. And certainly, I think the manager has done a good job answering all of us. But if we have specific requests, and I think this is a great one that both of you came up with, let's just vote it.
Well, that's why I put it on here for the board to take action and make that request.
So I don't think,
So I know it's listed here as second meeting, but I would like the flexibility to, again, have the town manager be able to move up or back the department heads. Again, I don't know all the requirements, or if they're ready to go or not ready to go, and what's more flexible. But if we were hearing from multiple departments within a month, I think removing that second meeting allows for more flexibility and visibility. So I don't know how you guys feel about.
So I have a question, I'm sorry. There's only 7 departments? And while I love hearing from it, and I thought it was super informative, I don't know that I need to hear the same presentation over and over and over again. So if you guys are looking for just like updates on what are happening, and it takes substantial time for the department heads to put together those presentations. So I think we just need to be really clear on what we're really looking for from them. Because while I thought they were great, and I learned what DPW does and things that I didn't realize they did, I have to imagine it took them a considerable amount of time to put forth that presentation, where we were taking them away from their regularly scheduled work. And while I enjoyed it, I don't know how much time we can continue to ask for the same presentation. That's my only comment, and I'm happy to hear from all of the departments, but I think 1 a month or 2 a month is a lot of regular work time to put together an update for us. My understanding is we added that departmental section in the beginning for departmental items where they could come and provide us updates on information.
I'm the one that moved that change to the departmental update. That was made because rather than having them sit in the audience an hour or two after their day had ended, I wanted, if they had issues, I wanted to move them to the top of the calendar so that they can come in out of respect for their time and the fact that they've been at their workday since 7 or 8 in the morning, that they can get their issues and then leave and not have to sit through the entire meeting. That's why that was put in. It wasn't necessarily just to provide an open forum for an update. I would love if they took advantage of that. Quite frankly, I don't think they're going to, nor would I ask them to. I also understand and appreciate what you're saying in terms of the in-depth updates every single time. I think it would also depend on who is the makeup of the board. So although they give, and DPW gives an update that they did and very detailed, next year if there's new members here, myself and Ann are brand new, this is our first term, we wouldn't have saw that presentation if it was given last year. So I think it really depends on who the makeup is. They certainly went more in depth than I was expecting. I think my intent was just to hear what's going on, and not necessarily get a rundown of the tree of the department and everything. I think we can get that through the budget and in the town meeting books. But if we want to say once a year, limit it once a year, so it's not every month. Once they come this year, that's fine with me. I just want to make sure that each department has a chance to interact with the board, and the board has a chance to interact with the department on a more instead of just them coming before us and asking for an approval for something, because previously that's the only time we heard from them.
So I did watch, I wasn't here, but I did watch it in reverse. And we also have to think that these meetings are not 100% for us, first of all. Yes, we take action, but any board or commission, we hold it in public so the public knows what's going on. And the reality is these committees or these organizations within the town are not necessarily known. So like DPW, you could break that out into the different sections. You don't need to have Joanna and her team doing it all at once. You could break it out. But I think making us aware and keeping us aware. Now, I met with the manager before the meeting about some issues that I had. And one of the big things that we're all asked when we run for office is about the budget. And it's the one item that we get. But a million things happen throughout the year. And it would be nice if we actually knew what was going on in the department and what those figures reflected. So to me, if we do it in the correct way, I don't think it's going to take them a long time. And like I said, some of these organizations that might have multiple units, break them out. Have the sewer superintendent. You don't need to have the DPW director talking about the sewer department. We have a sewer superintendent. We have a parks and cemetery superintendent. These individuals should be presenting to this board. It should not just be department heads coming to see us. So let's give them an opportunity to present to us as well. I mean, I know that they do, and Ann can probably attest to this, the finance committee probably sees a lot of these people, and they're probably the only board in town that sees everybody. So let's try and make this board an opportunity for them to let us know on an ongoing basis what's going on, so that we're not catching up at, oh geez, you need 3 positions because something's happening. And then everybody's like deer in the headlights. We give them a chance to preview that so people are not getting upset, and then we don't have a short period of time in which people to ask questions. It's helpful for town meeting members, it's helpful for other committees to be aware as well. So I'm in support of, and with Mr. Chambers' revision, I would happily say, however it wants to be scheduled, it's the chair who sets the agenda, so I'm certainly happy to, in concert with the manager, so I'm happy to make a motion that we have department updates each month for those months in which we do not have a third meeting.
I'll second.
If I may, just a few comments. It would be helpful if I understood how granular the board would like to get. Because if we were to schedule the second meeting of each month, there's no way you're going to be, and it all depends. We'd have to bring in 2 or 3 every month in order to complete a full cycle. So you could hear and get a report from each division, so to speak, of the department. I would also suggest, I think, I'm not opposed to it, but I think the second meeting in May would be a little aggressive to start this. I would say maybe in June, to give the departments a little lead time that they are going to be scheduled, and we'd have to figure out in what batting order they would come in.
I did not make that as part of my motion. I did not put beginning May 2024. I just said, we're going forward. And I specifically said, let's work it out with the chair and the manager so we can figure it out. And we will have potentially a new board at that time. So
would the board like to put a time limit on the presentations of somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes for each, just so we can set the parameters for the departments to when they start preparing their presentation, what parameters they have to work within.
I would say 10 minutes. 10 minutes max. I mean, if they can get it to 5, that's great. But I mean, if they're looking ahead, oftentimes we get a grant application. I'd like to know that you're applying for the grant. And I know sometimes the grants come in at different times and you can't necessarily predetermine that. But for a lot of these grants, if they're it would be nice to understand what's behind them. We often just get very little information as to what is going on. And then, it would be nice to know that. So I would say for myself, 10 minutes max. But again,
Again, I don't know if the time limit's necessary, but I feel like we could probably limit what we're asking for. And for me personally, I want to know what they're working on, what their roadblocks are, and, what their vision for the future is. I think we saw presentations that gave us great insight, but as Mr. Crane said, we can find that through other means. So for me, again, maybe there's not a lot going on, so I don't necessarily know if 10 minutes is even too much, but that opportunity to say, this is what we're working on. Again, maybe we put parameters around it. What kind of grants, what kind of roadblocks, what kind of technology, what kind of staffing are you looking at, or those types of things that we see towards the end of the year when we're budgeting. So we have some more insight into that rather than this is how the department's set up. These are the projects we've worked on in the past. I'd rather know what we're doing going forward or how other projects set us up to get to where we currently are and how they're moving forward, because a lot of the stuff that they do is multi-phased and multi-yeared. But I don't know if I need even a PowerPoint, to be honest with you. I'd like the discussion. I'd like to, some sort of organization around it, but I don't know how the other board members feel. Or if there's other agenda items or something that they'd like to hit on. I think that can help set the direction for the town manager to get the right departments in at the right time.
yeah, I think experience will teach us anyway. So they're going to come in, they're going to give us something, and we might say, maybe that's too much, maybe it's not enough, whatever. I don't think we have to decide now. And again, we're a week before an election. This is a matter that, frankly, there could be a brand new board member here who isn't really getting a chance to weigh in on. So theoretically, whatever we say here, 2 weeks from now, there might be someone with a very different approach. So I would say that I'm on board with what's said by other members, and I would just say I'm going to stick with my motion as it is, and we can certainly work it out as we move forward.
I seconded that.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that I agree with everything that was previously said, and I don't want to be too prescriptive that you have to give me this, and this, and you have to be done by 10 minutes. My thing is that I want to know what you're working on now in the future, but I also want to know, like Mr. Chambers said, what are your roadblocks? What can the board help you with? What do you need from us to support you? That's sort of my focus. I don't think we need the org chart. It was great seeing the org chart, but I don't think we need the org chart. I liked hearing about the succession planning. So that was kind of the one thing I took away from the finance one was that they're doing the succession planning. So we know that 5 years from now, we're going to have experienced people continuing the good level of work for the town in that department. DPW gave a ton of information. I'm a DPW geek. It's what I do for a living, so I loved it. Other people are probably like, that was too much. But that's, and I agree with what Mr. Carpenter said, is that we will, find out as we go that, what works and what doesn't work. But I don't want to be so prescriptive that we take away the director's opportunity to sell their department or talk about the great thing that's going on because it wasn't on our list.
I understand what you guys are saying. I would not, my concern is I would not want town employees thinking that this action is the board trying to micromanage what they do. And that would be a concern for me.
Well, we'll tell them to watch this meeting. And if they don't fall asleep in the first 15, they'll be fine. But we can certainly, at the first meeting, lay that out, or as a board, we can certainly draft a letter to the staff or to the manager to share with the staff, which might be more appropriate, so that they're understanding that it is not the board's desire to do that. It's a desire for information, and it's also a desire for the public, for these meetings which we have, to be of use to the people that we serve. And I think those type of reviews, whatever you want to call them, are helpful. But I think experience is going to be our great teacher. And again, if it's a lousy idea and we find that it's taken way too much time and we're not getting, or people aren't getting what they want, the board can decide to go back to the original. So it's not like it's set in stone. We can't review this in 6 months. So, but I certainly respect everybody's opinion on the subject, but I do think it's an important thing for us to move forward with.
So there was a motion and a second. Is all those in favor?
Aye.
The chair is opposed. I just think once a month is a lot. It's a lot to be asking staff to come in once a month to tell us, to updates. And I'm concerned that we're not going to get participation because they're not going to have an update every month.
But
I don't think we're looking for every department every month.
No, we're looking.
Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. I just
We're gonna see
think
them
that
once a
there's,
year.
like,
Once a year.
Once a year, we'll see the department.
no, there's only 7 departments.
Right, but that's why I said,
So-
if we see them once a year, well, we're only looking for once a year. We don't
But
meet
there's
that often in the
12
summer.
months. and
Not in the summertime. We only hold like 2, maybe 3 meetings in the summertime.
One.
Yes.
Actually, 1.
What?
We're already down months.
So I get it, but if you want to start in June, that's when we start doing summer month meetings. So it doesn't actually,
We didn't say anything about a start
I
date.
understand. It
You-
was
you could-
proposed.
But my understanding
concern
was
is-
that I've already heard from one department because they told another board that they were scheduled to come before us in July. So they're already planning on coming before us in July.
I get it. I get what you're saying. I think it's a lot of work for the departments, and I'm concerned for the town employees. That's my point.
And I think we're mindful of it, and we are willing to revisit it if that comes to be. But we don't have to start it in June. We have no motion, or the motion omitted May 2024, and we can certainly start in the fall if that's something that the chair, whoever the chair is after the election, and the manager decide. You
If
know.
I may, that's why I asked how granular does the board want to get? Because the way we had it set up would allow each department to come in once a year. So there are 4 quarters with 5 weeks, 2 each quarter. We have 7 departments that allowed for 8. So I just thought the board wanted to know more about some of the individual things that are going on the division level, which necessitated the request. So that's why I was looking for a little guidance. I think the presentations that were made were quite lengthy, and maybe there was an attempt to at least break that down into smaller segments. So,
But I mean, out of respect for them, I also think that there was their opportunity to educate the board about their departments that they've never had before. So I think they were taking that opportunity to educate us on things that their department was doing, because Public Works is a very forward-facing board. Finance, department finance is not. So I appreciated all that information, because I think they took the opportunity to educate us on what's going on.
More to come. And they did a great job. I mean, they really did. They did a phenomenal job. Both Joanna and Karen and the crew did a phenomenal job.
Okay, so we're going to move on to 10B. And this is a request for a board vote on a possible report on the billing cycles of solid waste and trash bills, late notices, and recent issues with mailings.
Yep. So I'm requesting a board vote, requesting a report from town administration, and I've already spoke with the town administration about this. There have been concerns in the community expressed in social media and in other forums, phone call. I know I've received phone calls and emails from members, from residents. I'm sure other members have as well, voicing concerns that there was particular issues with the trash bills this recent fiscal year with respect to software issues related to that. And I don't think it's the board's purview, at least this is my opinion. I don't think it's the board's purview to get involved in individual cases and try to adjudicate individual cases that residents have. But I think if there was a larger software failure or a larger, process failure, then, that caused multiple people to either miss their notices or late notices went out late and interest was accruing per state law. And then finding out, an example is finding out 8 months afterwards that you've been accruing interest for 8 months and now you owe this, but you didn't know you owed it. Otherwise you would have paid it sooner. I think it's important for this board to know about that and to, get the information from the town administration that is the best source of this information, because you work with the systems, you work with the system is on a daily basis in terms of being able to identify any issues that took place and bring that back to the board so that we're aware of it. I'm going to take this liberty that I do want to say that I think in recent times, it has become easy for people to get very upset at others. A lack of decorum is existent in how we are interacting with people. As somebody who works in the public sector, has a career in the public sector, I see it on a daily basis. And I see it from the resident point of view. I see it from the municipal employee point of view, and I also see it from an elected official's point of view. I just want to remind everybody that we are all neighbors, we're all residents, and whenever we all have bad days, I have plenty of bad days. We have good days, we have bad days, but when we are interacting with, if you are an employee and you're interacting with the public, to remain professional, and vice versa. If you're a resident and you're interacting with our employees, the town employees who, yes, they work for you, but they're serving you, they are public servants, to remain professional and respectful as well. So I would hope that going forward, any of your interactions, it is not a failure of an employee, it's not a failure of a resident, it was a failure of a software system. If there was a failure, that comes out in the report, and I think it's important that we not play the blame game, not play the game where we are looking to target individuals, on either side of this issue. And let's look at where the issue happened from, which is a software failure, if there was one, get to the bottom of it, and then move forward and put in systems that support our residents and support our employees to be successful.
Are there any questions or any comments?
So has it been determined to be a software issue?
Based upon our discussions with members of the Finance Division, yes, there was a software issue that related to the utility billing module that did not allow us to send out demands on a timely basis.
Has it been corrected?
It has been corrected, although I must say that the initial billing did go out. We have an affidavit from the vendor that generates those bills for us. Yes, I mean, the bill does indicate that the payment is due within a certain period of time, 30 days. And beyond that, there is an implied assumption that interest would start accruing if the bill is not paid. But the demand did go out late. We'll provide that in a report to you and identify some of those issues. I can say that we are looking at a new software application that will allow our residents to sign in and get notified that a bill is due within 15 days. But they would have to sign up in order to do that. Those individuals who do not sign up would still receive a demand notice, but the notification process would not apply to those individuals that choose not to participate in that aspect of the program.
Through the chair, has there been discussion of any amnesty on this last billing cycle?
We're examining the volume of those who were impacted. We don't have that analysis done yet.
Yeah, so I think the idea is to include that in the report, all this information, allow the town administration time to discover that, and then provide the report back. But yeah, I agree with Mr. Chambers. That is one of the things, as town administration knows, what I'd like to see in the report. In terms of that, provided the board does approve the board vote that I'm putting forward.
I just have one, which is related to mailing. So we know that a mail run happened. We checked with the postmaster to make sure that those bills actually went out? So at a state agency that I work for, this has periodically happened. So it can happen. So I would just ask that if we do this, that we contact the post office and ask if there was any known issues with any of these people, because it has been known to happen that things go in the mail and they don't reach their sender, and it's not through anybody's doing, it just happens. And obviously it's a great concern for people if that's happened. So I would just ask if Mr. Crane was willing to add that when he makes the motion.
I can tell you that in some cases, the treasurer collector's office will receive undeliverable mail. It comes back to them. They act on that and try to get it to where it needs to go. In terms of what doesn't come back to the town, we have no way of measuring that. Certainly, we've had discussions with the postmaster in the past on issues relating to mail, but that's something that we cannot track, nor do we know if mail is not being delivered for whatever reason.
I would just like us to ask the postmaster if those addresses have had issues with mail. I'm not asking us to look into the ether and come up with something. Don't tell me something you don't know. I just want to know, I think we need to ask that question.
No, in some cases, we get mail back undelivered with a valid address, and we don't know why it's coming back undeliverable, but those are some of the issues we discuss with the post office.
Does anybody else have questions or comments? Is there a motion?
So I'd make a motion that the board vote to request a report from the town administration about the billing cycle of the solid waste/trash bills, sewer bills, late notices, any recent issues with the mailing, including confirmation with the Postmaster General about the mailing going out, the penalty amounts, including potential amnesty programs that may be available to those affected residents, as well as anything else with respect to this information that the town administration wants to share with the board.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well.
So I have a question. We have a list here of the timeline for the trash bills, sewer bills, when they're due. Is this going to be posted on the website?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else signed up for public comment? Okay, great. So we have no second public comment. In our packets, there are meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or changes? Okay, we will accept them as read. We would just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. We are adjourned.